Okay, let's start. Okay, Michael, please give a brief introduction about yourself.
All right, so yes, so good afternoon, everyone. And again, thank you, Dr. Chin, for inviting me to give a quick talk on cybersecurity. So this topic is dear to our heart, as we are the startup focusing on developing tools specifically for this industry. So today, what I'm going to share with you is really the story of cybersecurity, what it is at a high level. In 1 hour, we will not do any justice to explain what it is. And then kind of give you a little overview of what's the other components within cybersecurity and what are the interesting aspects from a career perspective. So to start, my name is Michael Chen. I am the VP of Customer Success at Rich Security. So Rich Security is a startup in Silicon Valley. So this is actually running to be our 3rd year. And we've been getting a lot of inquiry and ask about our products. And then so just quite quickly show you that, this is our founders, that Nick and Lydia, and they both are entrepreneurs that has done startup in the past. And the focus that we are building in this company is really cybersecurity red teaming tool, which is what we call the Richbot, which is the automated pen testing tool. And what we believe is the best defense is to think like a hacker. So that kind of gives you a little clue of what we're going to talk about on some of the focus in these topics. So as I said, we're a startup. However, we have global presence at this point. We're based in Silicon Valley, actually down the road from where the school is in Fremont. But we have distributors, partners, and customers globally from every continent, as I will show you in the map. And we also recognized by Gartners. One of the upcoming, the new tool from Gartner is the automated pen testing tool and red teaming tools. And Rich Security, as being mentioned, as one of the sample vendors in this hypercycle curve, which is where the technology curve is. So we are in the infancy of automated pen testing, and we are growing very rapidly as the technology matures over time. So we're still in the innovation phase at this point. So with that said, let me go into today's topics, cybersecurity. So what it is and how does it impact us as a user of internet, as a consumers and services that our bank and our internet provide to us. So in this is just a vague definitions. You can look it up in Google. Pretty much everybody have a slight version of that. So pretty much this is a process, a control systems that designed to protect networks and device from external threats or cyber attacks. That's the key, right? The system are put in place just basically to reduce cyber attack risk and protect against unauthorized access of the systems. And again, there's no guarantee in cybersecurity. There's no such thing as 100% secure. The goal is try to have as much system protections in place as much as you can. So the goal is really to come up with a system, to come up with process, to come up with governance policy, so that you can ensure certain procedures are followed, the best practice are put in place, and the goal is to protect the system from unauthorized access, which people will use to do data theft and ransomware, as all of you has heard on the news recently. So the point of message I want to share is cyber threat is real. This is not a science fiction anymore. You guys all heard from the news, and it is a global event. So what I'm showing you on this slide is really, if you look on the upper right, this is a FireEye's cyber threat maps. This is a map. This is the screenshot I took at noon today. And during at noontime, there's already 365 attacks going on globally. So this is just a snapshot. If you pull up this map, you can see the attacks going from different directions and different regions of the world. So this is real things that happens as we speak. So this is nothing, it's not localized to advanced country or third world country. This is happening everywhere. So the top industry that are in target is the industry that has money. So that is where financial services is one, telecoms, manufacturing, insurance, etc. And it's not just focused on any group or any specific type of company. This is actually in a sense that everyone is impacted, from countries, from government agencies, multinations, enterprise, even big company, government that has budgets to build defenses are still being hacked, and infrastructures, and even small, medium sized company like mom and pop stores, and sometimes individuals that also get hacked as well. Just some statistic, in 2021, US suffered by far the largest number of ransomware breaches with 1352 big games attacks. So they even names the type of attacks as being hunters, games, etc. So in this case, going after the big fish or the big hunt is called big games, right? Followed by France, and you can see that the parity between US and other countries, like Canada, UK. And again, we talk about big game attack, not all the attacks. So obviously, if you add up all the attack, it's much higher number than this. So these are the one that will cost billions of millions of hundreds of millions of dollars in terms of ransomware.
Question, Michael?
Sure.
These are only the ones that have been published that are. Do you have any sense of how many large attacks have happened that we don't know about because they're being held secret?
Yeah, so if it's not being publicly announced, we will not know. It's a lot of this data are being published anonymously. So sometimes they'll see certain things happen, but people will not talk about it. So this is one of the aspects of cybersecurity, is that a lot of things are happening in the background, but some of the big cases will be announced, right? Because the company has no choice. Just like many years ago, Yahoo Mail got hacked, so all the people that use Yahoo Mail got affected. So that's one example of that. We can talk about Columbia pipelines. Again, it has very visible impact, so therefore you'll hear about those as well. But this happened quite a bit. Sometimes it's not in our backyard, so we don't think about it. For example, we have customers in Puerto Rico's, Costa Rica's, Honduras governments, and these are the government level that they have to shut down their network because of ransomware. Okay, so yeah, so I mean it's occurred quite a bit on a regular basis. All industry, for industrial energies, and you can see that there's other things. So just as to your questions, actually it's not difficult to find data on cyber attack. All you have to do Googles, and all this information will pop up, right? Again, the one that's publicly announced will be the one you'll hear about. There's other threat intelligence where things are happening in the background, but again, people will not disclose names and others pertinent information about cyber attack. Okay, so again, this is really high level. This is a very broad topic, so it's very difficult to give very specific on every topic. But what I'm trying to do, can I give you a quick landscape? So when people talk about cybersecurity attack and things like that, people will automatically think about ransomware, because those are the things that you hear on the news recently, right? This company got ransomware, and you have to pay ransom to unlock the key, get the key to unlock the data being encrypted. However, to do a ransomware attack, there's many things need to happen beforehand. So this is like the malware, the backdoors, the jacking, the crypto jacking, the DOS, DNS. Those are different type of threat and attacks that people use to get into your network. And once they get into your network, they can start planning command and control, where they can start sending from inside to outside and downloading various type of programs or malware or Trojans into your servers, into your PCs, into your other infrastructures, and then move from one server to another server until they find the holy grail of servers which have all your critical sensitive data. And this is when they start doing the encryptions for ransomware or the data exfiltration. That means extracting sensitive data, personal data, or company trade secret, and then use that to do ransomware. So this is just a list of type of attacks that's commonly used, and the combination of multiple of them will be part of that as well. So another graph really talk about ransomware specifically, because this is a term people hear all the time. So this is just kind of show you just in Q1 2022, right? This is the first 3 months of this year. You can see that the industry being attacked by ransomware, the utility, the technology, hardware, the software, retailing, the real estate, public sector, professional service, capital goods. Everybody's in the list. There's no exemptions on here, so everybody's got impacted. More interestingly is I found that there is a evolutions of ransomware over time. So this doesn't just happen overnight, but you can see that one of the things I want to show you in this chart is you can see the rampage of ransomware proliferations over time. So starting in 2005, this is the beginning. And then in 2009, that's about 10,000 samples of ransomware out in the wild, right? That impacted that different way. At that point, it's still very primitive. It's just trying to do some basic phishing type of activity where they'll trick you to click on a program to download some virus onto your PC, things like that. If you can still remember the early days of PCs, of Windows, where they'll offer free tools and you can just click on it and then you get infected with virus, right? So those are the early years. But since from 2010 to 2013, within 3 years, instead of 10,000 ransomware samples, now you have 100,000 samples. And this is where the cryptos, currencies is happening as well. A lot of things happen where there's easy transaction of money, etc. Now, from 10,000 to 100,000 takes about 3 years. From 100,000 to 250,000 takes about 1 year. You can see that the rate is ramping very, very quickly at this point. As of 2018, they see you're getting about close to 2015. I'm sorry, there's close to 4 million ransomware. So now people start looking at different technology, different way of encrypting your servers, ransomware from tens of thousands to millions, etc. I mean, this has become a big industry for the cyber criminal, and that's why a lot of people are doing it. And moreover, some of the ransomware samples or source codes are being sold in the dark web as well. So anybody can just go out and buy it and try to emulate and use it to do this cyber theft. So this is just a quick view to show you that this is something that we have to take it very seriously. And again, there's a lot of companies and meals that's occurring as well. So talking about cybersecurity, the ransomware, etc. So why do we care? Right? We are just an individual. We're not running business. So if Yahoo get hacked, if Nike get hacked, if JBS got hacked, what happened to us? Right? There is a cost in cybersecurity that affect not only the business but affect everybody else. But let's talk about from a business perspective. If you run a business, if you run a company, the cost of cybersecurity is in twofold. One is that there is cost of doing business. That means if you have a network, you have a website, you have remote access, then you need to have systems, right? You need to have routers, firewalls, IDS protecting your network. You need to have governance, you need to have policies. Then there's regulations, like there's data privacy that you have to worry about from the US, from UK. They all have different rules that you have to follow. Then if you do financial transactions, then there's, of course, there's PCI compliance, there's ISO, there's all kind of regulatory things that you have to follow. So those are costs that you have to put in place because of this cybersecurity risk. And you need to put it in to protect you as a company, to protect the data, to protect your customers, etc. And in order to do all that does, it takes time and it takes resource. So this is where this industry is now become another big boom in the sense of it's not just something people talk about or not talk about, ignore. People actually ignore in the past, and now it become a forefront of every board meeting. Say, what is our plan in terms of mitigating risk and protect the company. So when the company have breaches, that's also another issue that they have to deal with. First is business disruptions, right? Companies being embarrassed, right? There's company reputations. The CEO had to say, we messed up, right? And there's trade secret being lost, like NVIDIA got hacked in March. There's rumor that one of their greatest graphic chips are being stolen, or the trade secrets, right? There's lots of opportunities from sales, there's customers, etc. So it is cost it's a big dollars, and people will put money based on their business. If it's some business based on, if it's a financial institute doing transaction, they talk about dollars per minute kind of transactions, right? Company like technology company will be technology, the patents that people, the sensitive data that people develops, right? The other innovations are being stolen by other people, by these cyber crimes. So as customers, as user, right, we rely on this, the service that this company provides to us. So for example, if you have a bank account with company, a financial service, and they get hacked, now you're worried about your account being hacked, your personal data is being sold in the dark web, and you have to go through a lot of things that you have to deal with, just like losing your personal identity, right? Just like identity theft, people can take your information and try to open your account, and again, you will incur liability, etc. So this is real. This is serious, and it does affect how we do things, how we think about using the web, giving out information on a regular basis, whether we should click on that phishing, that email that looks suspicious. There's a phone call whether we should answer it or not, because you're all worried about, is it real? Is that phishing? Would I accidentally put myself up for that people are trying to get information out of you?
I think Equifax, remember Equifax had a huge breach and everybody's social security numbers was taken, I think.
That's
right?
correct. Yes, and that was a few years ago, right? Now those are more regular now. It happened more frequent now.
These days, our school just got hacked by we use a QNAP.
Mhm.
So right now we lost the ransom note. So we even we don't know how to pay for those people.
So from a ransom note perspective, again, we talk about big and small company, but obviously the big one is up in the news where Colonial Pipeline was last year, NVIDIA was this year, JBS was right after Colonial Pipelines, and those are in the hundreds of millions, right? just like you talked about, QNAP, again, is device not being secure, and people are figured out all the gaps and all the vulnerability on those systems, in the software, in the servers, and in the device. And then they can have, even with even secure company like Cassava is also got hacked as well. So this is actually pretty scary. But again, take a step back, right? Every time there's issue or challenges in the market, that means there's opportunity for all of us. So from a cybersecurity perspective, I want to take a step back to say, if you look at all the hacking today, what are the different area of cybersecurity that's people have been thinking about and been trying to protect, etc. So this list is not, again, it's not comprehensive, it's not in any priority, but you've been hearing about critical infrastructure. So this is examples of a power plant, for example, that using industrial system like a PLC, systems that managing the control systems, power plant, water pumps, electrical transmissions, even no reactors, things like that, right? So those are critical infrastructures. And this is one of the areas that people are very concerned about because of the technologies that are being used in the past in terms of running all this infrastructures. And now they start getting, because of the internet and people try to move management system from on-premise locally controlled to remotely controlled because of convenience, because of scaling, etc. But that's also create opportunity for hackers to find vulnerability to get into the systems and causing and to do some of the cybercrime. A couple very famous one is the early days of the Iran centrifuge, right? Somebody went in and reprogrammed the PLC, which damaged all the control system, which was the beginning of that hacking and espionage of critical infrastructures. So that's just kind of one area, and this is a huge area to look at a lot of legacy systems coupling with the new the web internet technologies. Another area that I think most of you probably well aware of, since we are in Bay Area, is network security. So we have the Cisco, the Junipers, the early days of 3Coms, all these network vendors that put out routers and switches that connecting the LAN to the WAN and create this internet that everybody using. And of course, from a network security perspective, beside the routers, there's encryptions, there's firewalls, there's IPS. So people keep adding layer and layer of defense to protect the network, to protect the access, etc. And it's still happening, right? People try to find better way to build. Another way is creating a new lock to find a better way to build a better locks and cheaper and faster, etc. But again, this is a critical cat and mouse game. Is racing against who can come up with a more clever systems and who can break the system faster, right? So this is an ongoing challenge for the security industries and also opportunity for all of us. As the network move from on-prem to the cloud, so this is, we're talking about the AWS cloud, the Azure cloud, the Google clouds, and of course, there's a lot of other public cloud as well as private cloud as well, which is maybe a hybrid of both cloud, public and private cloud. When you talk about cloud, that's another area of technologies that people implement because cloud use different way, different type of mechanism to interface with the user, to interface with the internal systems, etc. So cloud security become another big area of from a cyber security perspective. That how do you protect the cloud? What are some of the learning or best practice from the network security side, from the on-prem can move to the cloud? So some of the techniques still apply. A lot of times people still using it. However, the government, the policies, things like that will be different. So beside the infrastructure, beside the network, beside the cloud, there's another big area that also open up from a security perspective, which is application software. So the operating systems, starting with operating systems, the Microsoft Windows servers, desktops, is one of the biggest OS out in the world. There's Microsoft is also infamous for having a lot of security vulnerabilities in their software. So if you're a Microsoft shop running Microsoft Windows, you get patched on a regular basis because people will find vulnerabilities, day zero vulnerabilities. Some of them are very critical that need to be patched right away. So from the OS side, Microsoft is definitely one of the culprit that contributed to this area. Linux, Mac OS, even though in the past we all believe Mac OS is safe. As a matter of fact, Mac OS also has this vulnerability that people is able to exploit as well. Now, beside operating systems, there's anytime you have software, database, web servers, web applications, doesn't matter what language you use, what framework you use, there's always way of creating loopholes that people can use to break into your software. And this is part of the shift from software development. So I don't know how many of you has done software development, but in the early days, the goal is to write the module as quickly as you can, make sure it works, and then you toss it with and say, I'm done, you deploy it, right? Now you get to the point where people are very concerned about security. So as part of the software development, you need to worry about following certain methodology or practice called a secure lifecycle development framework to make sure that you do some checking from a security perspective, make sure that your input is validated, right? There's no memory overflow, there's no buffer overflow, and other different techniques to protect people from using payload to break into your software or your database. So application is becoming another big area from a cybersecurity perspective. Then, of course, in the recent years, mobile phones is another big boom, right? Everybody have a mobile phone now. Not just making phone call, downloading, watching stuff on the web. We are actually using our mobile phones to do chatting, to posting what's happening in our life in TikToks, in Facebook. But more importantly, we're doing financial transactions. We're doing e-commerce on our mobile phone, right? So now iOS, Android are becoming a hotbed for cyber criminals to try to figure out how do they get into your phone so that they can steal your data, or I can impersonate you to make financial transactions or get into your account. So all these areas, as I talked about, is huge, and each one of them you can make a career just staying on one of the topics, right? So, but it's all under this cybersecurity big umbrella. So again, getting into an area of opportunity. So what I'm going to focus on instead of talking about all of this, kind of talk about from the operations from the network perspective, right? So this is, we talk about the IT infrastructure now. So the industrial side, I'll put it aside, but they are related somehow. But if you kind of, it's sort of, you can sort of take a one and apply to a different industry. So IT infrastructure, we talk about network, talk about servers, endpoint, network security. This is the firewall, the IDS, IPS, remote access, the policies, who can get in, who cannot, and what kind of password, authentications, identity, etc. Now, from the operation side, so this is the people that sort of in the past we call it the IT admin people, but now there's evolving into IT as in IT just for computers, servers, etc. There's another group called the network operations. So later on, you'll hear the red teaming that I talked about, kind of mentioned earlier. So now the network operator are the blue teams. So they're more like a defenses guy monitoring the network, looking at all the remote access coming in, say, look at the IP address. Is this person's allowed to come in? What servers that is you have permission to access, and watching the IP address to see it go to some place that it's not supposed to go, right? So the monitoring aspect is also another huge industry that is getting to be very sophisticated as well. So this is where the company like FireEye, Splunk, other things, and their product keep evolving from EDR to XDR, etc. So just throwing names, but just kind of give you a sense that this is another big area that people try to find out. How do when I do a monitoring of a network device, when I'm looking at all the traffic coming in, what are the tools I need? What are the automation? What are the intelligence, i.e. AI, running in the background to help me filtering, tagging, labeling, so that I can make sense of what I'm seeing? Because at this rate, a person does not have enough capacity to look at every single trace, because it's just not possible at this point. So there's a lot of machine learning, that's a lot of companies using machine learning to sort through the data and try to figure out which one of them should bring up to alert the operator so that they can take actions, right? What are the policies need to be put in place in terms of access, in terms of user role, etc.? What are the process, right, in the sense of when you want to upgrade a software, what are the steps you need to take? What are the things you have to check before you can push an upgrade, and look at the configurations of the device, etc. And what are the different report that you have to check, etc. And finally, the validations. Well, I shouldn't say finally. Another step is also validations, right? How do you know that when you put a policy in place, how do you know put a configuration in place actually work? You don't want to wait until your system being hacked to say, oh, now I found there's a bug in my policy, and people is able to figure that out, right? So you want to find, you need to have a process in place to check your system on a regular basis to make sure that there is no change that, I should say unauthorized change or changes that people didn't think about the impact, right? They just make changes, and therefore it might inadvertently change one of the rules that allows certain access to come in. So validation is actually very important pieces, and this is something that we as Bridge Security is putting a lot of effort in trying to automate the validation using pen testing as a method to try to close this gap. And then, of course, regulations, compliance, as I mentioned earlier. If you're in certain industry, if you're in healthcare, if you're in finance, if you're doing any transaction e-commerce, there's data privacy that you have to meet. There's various different kind of regulations, and some of these regulations and compliance require each company to submit what we call it a pen testing report or a compliance report, that including all the pen tests of your systems to make sure that you have a way to look for vulnerability and make sure that those are remediated or patched or fixed given any time. Because again, there's no system is 100% safe. There's no such things. The only goal that people can do is try to be rigorous about the process and make sure that there's a systematic way of following through, and make sure that there's check and balance, and try to do the best in terms of protecting the network. Any questions so far? So let me continue. Just a couple quick snapshot. If you subscribe to any one of these news, you get daily update to your mobile phone or your email about some company got hacked, FBI is warning something, hacker for hire, right? Things like that. And this is again, Untrust, right? Got breached by ransomware grain, and guess what? They're doing digital security, and they got ransomware. Again, Windows Server saying that there's issue with Windows Server's update. Atlassian is a conference tool. It was leaked because part of their development process allow somehow get hard code password was leaked again, right? So again, those are all backdoors that people use to get into your system. And Conti is a very famous APT, which is the Advanced Persistent Threat Group, which is a quote unquote state sponsor group that also contribute to a lot of ransomware globally. So this is the news that they just hacked and encrypt Costa Rican government. So as I mentioned earlier, even government can hack, right? So the question is, we talk about cybersecurity process systems, right? This is nothing new. Since the beginning of the developing the network, LAN and WAN access, remote access, firewall, etc. People already have a system in place. There's a vulnerability management process that's being implemented by big company for sure, by government agency for sure, but they still get hacked. Why is that, right? Then the next question is, with all the monitoring tool, there's so much data coming in that how do you know which alert that you need to be prioritized? So these are some of the challenges or opportunity that people in the cybersecurity world is looking at. And this is an ongoing challenge and opportunities of how did they find a better way of addressing these issues. Why on the criminal side, they'll figure out what is the other clever way of trying to break your systems, right? So this is sort of like cat and mouse game. So really to understand this bigger picture of cybersecurity risk, just kind of look at it in a very simplistic way, right? Obviously, if you think about a network, you think about start with your servers, start with your endpoint in premises, and then because you are doing an e-commerce or you're doing a B2B, that means you need to have internet access to your supply chain. Then you also have working from home policy that allow you to work remotely, just like we all are calling in to these meetings. That means you have to have network access, you need to have networks control, you need to have firewalls, you need to have IPS monitoring traffics. And then if you're a big company, big enterprise, you also have monitor systems, you also have all kind of tools, scanners for looking for vulnerability on your system. But what does this all mean? You still get hacked, right? So it's really looking at it from a sense of risk. So we define risk to be a threat. That means a cyber threat, which is triggered by vulnerability over the critical asset, right? People will try to get into your system any way they can to get onto your LAN. Once they're into your LAN, they'll figure out a way to go from one device, one server to another server until they find your critical asset. For example, a good example is that if you're working in a company developing software or hardware, just right, doing development, there's always what we call production systems. There's always financial system. There's always supply chain, and each of the system is governed by roles and access. So if you're working in manufacturing, you can only see manufacturing data. If you work in finance, you can only see finance. If you're engineering, you can only look at engineering. Of course, there are certain people that have dual role that can look at multiple systems. So how did we define a asset as a threat, right? So we can say, oh, well, if you have finance, of course, it's dealing with money, budget, so therefore it must be critical. Or if you're engineering, say, my latest software source code or my whatever method of doing something is the most important or sensitive because it's is related to the technology, right? And supply chains, that why my vendors or my ERP systems are critical. But somebody say, well, if you're in the lab, you can set up your test bed, or you can do some kind of a little project that's not critical. And especially with Wi-Fi technology right now, because you don't want to run a wire. You just put a Raspberry Pi or little AP, and they say, oh, I got access to my lab PCs, and I can work from my desk, etc. And guess what? Those are assets that could have vulnerability that hackers will use to get in first, because those are the ones that you don't think about, and those are easy. So those systems are didn't have all the rules and policy to lock down. So a lot of times those servers will have password like admin 123, etc. Very simple password. And hacker will think of how they will try to mimic what you think, and they try to think a different way of getting to your system. And those are the assets they will try to get in. Once they get into the asset, guess what? The PC might be connected to an engineering system. From there, they might figure out another way, because you're using similar password, might guess another one to get into your servers. From there, you might have access to something else. So this is what we call lateral movement within your network, right? So this is what we talk about threat, right? Threat as in the ability for cyber criminal to come in with the known vulnerability on your system. So this is like a weak password. Microsoft has a Eternal Blue vulnerability of Threat2 CVE that you have not patched, because this is your lab PC. You just download the latest version of Ubuntu, but there's a whole bunch of upgrade. You didn't install the upgrade. So guess what? Those CVEs are published. So the hacker will use those CVEs, and they will try to use that and eventually get to your access. So the risk is really the intersection of three different components: the threat, the asset, and vulnerability. And that's how your network will can be compromised by hackers. So this is the one that we need to focus on, is the risk. But and it's named that, then this is where we can come to some of the pain point. And this is how I can use this to relate to what are the opportunity from this industry and our career in cyber security. So first of all, I can mention financial systems are required to do compliance, right, because of regulation, etc. So a lot of those companies will do pen testing. So this is a term that I'm going to explain later in the next few slides what that means. So this is a penetration testing to figure out how secure, quote unquote, secure is the word, quote unquote, your system is based on the software version, based on the application you're using. There's a lot of public known vulnerability, and make sure that when you run the test, you either discover them and then you need to fix them, right? So that's part of the pen test. However, traditional way of doing pen tests is basically once a year, because first of all, it's very expensive and it's very labor intensive. Some of the pen tests actually takes multiple months just to do one test, right? And then if you think about it, if you have one or two or many servers, this pen testing process will take a long time. So what that means is it leaves a windows opportunity between pen tests for a hacker to come in. And what I mean by that is that a pen test is only an assessment in a period of time. So when the test is happening, let's say that the test is conducting the test right now in July, and we finish in July. That's for example. That means as of July, your system, quote unquote, meets certain standard, right? And is able to have certain risk score. However, between July to this year to July next year, there's 12 months, right? What happens between 12 months? It depends. Maybe because of your applications, you need to upgrade your applications because Microsoft update the servers or Linux update the OS, you have to do the update as well. Or maybe somebody just add in new servers, right? Any of those events is potentially an opportunity or risk that a hacker can use to find additional gaps that you're not aware of, right? Or somebody put in a server without the right proper policy, and that becomes a security hole, a gap that the hacker can use. So this is what we mean by, because of the length to do the test, there's opportunity for hacker to come in. The next one is, as a security engineers are in the blue team monitoring the network, taking care of the IT systems. You are overwhelmed with just patching Microsoft Windows Server, for example. Even on your PC, you get updates on a very regular basis that there's a new security patch you are recommended to update, right? So from a corporate perspective, from handling the company IT, you have thousands of laptops you need to upgrade. Do you upgrade every time you does a patch? Or do you think that this is applicable to you, that you need to upgrade, etc.? So those are all the point that you need to consider of how you figured out what is the right things to do, what are the risks, which one of the event you need to take care of first. If you have a monitor systems looking at your network, like I mentioned earlier, looking at your IDS, your firewall, other monitoring the incoming traffic, etc., and then you get that alert. Is this a real alert? Right. So it can't go back to the previous slide I talked about risk, right? If there's a threat, yes. There's a vulnerability, yes. And does it apply to your system? So these are things that you have to consider. So therefore, when you look at the reports from a scanner, from a XDR, from a alert notifications, right? Do you jump on it right away, or do you have a process to sort through them to say, I know those are other alerts, but does it apply to my systems? And how do I figure that out? Right. So this is another pain point that some of the customers are asking, can we help addressing those issues? And then finally, we just keep talking about all the work that you have to do, staff shortage, the skill set, running the operations, running the validations, try to keep up with compliance report, doing all this annual testing, program management, all this, right? We're not talking about one or two servers, we talk about enterprise-based, hundreds of servers, thousands of servers, thousands of PCs that you have to take care of from the IT security staff, right? So this is an area that are really short on people. The skill set that they need is very different. People usually don't talk about hacker in the past because hacker has the bad connotation. That means criminal activity. But in the recent years, there is a term called ethical hacking. And this is where people are doing hacking just to make sure that the system is safe, right? And the people that do the hacking is actually hackers, right? They think like a hacker, they operate hacker, and they love what they do, right? It's again, there's governance, there's policies, there's rules that they need to follow so that they don't inadvertently do something that can cause serious damage or liability to them and to the company. So this is an area that I want to highlight, that if you go into cybersecurity world, the career in cybersecurity, you can go to many different areas, from infrastructures, from network security, from monitoring operations, from even in development, writing software. How do you write software that is secure initially, so that you don't have to worry about creating vulnerability when you deploy the software. So all this requires skill, knowledge, and staffing. So let me kind of change direction a little bit. And before I do that, let me just pause for a minute to see if you guys have any questions. Okay. Let me introduce, I kind of mentioned pen testing at the earlier part of the talk. Let me just kind of put a definition to what pen testing means, if you don't know what that is. So pen testing is basically ethical hacking. So this is an assessment of the operation, the technologies, looking at the security posture, snapshot in time and under certain conditions. So this is very important to highlight. It's a snapshot in time and is only under certain conditions. So whatever pen testing you do, whatever vulnerability you find is under these specific conditions. For example, Microsoft can say that I have I don't know you guys are aware, there's a vulnerability nickname is called print nightmare. So that means if you have a print service turned on your Microsoft Windows servers, you are vulnerable for hacker to take control of your servers using the Windows Microsoft printer protocol. However, the software has the vulnerability, but does that mean your server will get hacked? The answer is yes and no. It depends, right? It depends on how you configure your servers. It depends on your network setup configurations. Do you protect that specific protocol such that people from the outside cannot get to it? Or do you have firewalls and things that set up, etc.? So that's just one example of a vulnerability that may exist in the system, but doesn't mean it can be exploited, right? So pen testing is really looking at the security posture at that specific time, that specific conditions. So the goal is, the pen test is to really define all possible exploitable vulnerability and to find the vulnerability before a hacker does. That's the goal, right? And that's the data will help drive the requirements, the security policy, and all the different regulations. So this is the purpose of pen testing. So what does a pen tester do? Right, so a pen tester is basically a member of the red team. So think about blue team and red team. So blue team is the defense. So it's like a monitoring the people that run your network operations. So they sit there, they set up the defense, and they monitor and make sure nobody breaks in. That's the blue team. The red team is the opposite, is the people that try to break into the systems. So the red teams are people that have to be very creative. They need to think outside the box, and they'll try to find out how I can break into a system, right? Just like a hacker does. So what did they do? They, just like any team members, they do need to do planning. They need to understand what are their scope of their project. The project is to do a pen testing of servers, right? Endpoints. They need to understand what is the scope. Then the information recon. So this is basically trying to find information about the user, the targets. For example, if you are being a part of the red team to do pen test for company XYZ as a service, then typically people would not give you access to the system because they want you to act like a hacker. So what do you do? So you need to find out, first of all, is there the username password that you can easily get? So this is where the phishing emails that you've been getting on your email on a regular basis, right? So somebody will try to trick you to click on the link to say, hey, you just win $1 million lottery. And you get excited, you click on the link, and guess what? The link will take you to servers that you fill out your names. But there's other more dangerous phishing email that when you click on the link, is actually download something to your servers, to your PCs. And then you start infecting, just like a Trojans, and start infecting your PCs. So those are some of the techniques people use, right? Phishing emails, phone calls, look it up in the internet, Google search your name, looking at your social media network like Facebook, etc., or even LinkedIn, to find out what is your profile, and try to guess your possible password, username, etc., to get into your systems. Then the other things about pen testing is that this is a person that's also very technical, right? It's not just planning, etc. Ethical hacking means somebody that knows how to use different tools, know how different hacking techniques, learn about how people break into break vulnerabilities, get into systems, different way of doing it based on whether it's SQL database or it's a Microsoft vulnerability like Struct2, using the different way to break a systems. And of course, all the tools that associate with it. And this person also needs to know how to write software. Obviously, you do write a lot of scripts to automate the process. And there's a lot of manual step and knowledge behind it. So ethical hacking is also a person that has very deep technical knowledge in terms of software programming, as well as how system network works. Now, you also need to do a lot of documentations because as part of the pen test, the result of the pen testing exercise is to produce a document. So this is a document that you will write down the step-by-step of how you get access credential to the servers, and then step-by-step of how you break a website, how you get into the systems, how you find the different way to find specific vulnerabilities, or a list of vulnerability, and then you try to exploit those, right? And if you are able to successfully find exploit vulnerabilities, this is a risk that you have found on the system that the blue team need to take action on. And then you need to provide all the detail to convince them this is real. And then, of course, writing that report is part of the effort. And then, for finally, you do have to do a presentation. So looking at this person, you need to have organization skill. You need to have oral skill, written skill, creative person, how to think differently, how to figure out different way to hack the systems, and of course, having the technical background as well. Some of the pen testers also work beside being in-house or freelance or security service. Some of them, which I know, love to do bug bounty. So this is our program to see who's the first to find a way to break into a Tesla, for example, or find a different way to break into a new piece of software that a software vendor will invite all these quote-unquote experienced hacker to find bugs. So this again is a person that's very capable and a lot of technical knowledge. So as I kind of mentioned, in terms of skill set to do in penetration testing, so organization skills is needed and critical. And this is like a cat and mouse detective work of trying to find out if you have this version of Windows, how you set up your configurations. Is there a way for me to find vulnerability and loopholes? The ability to write the report, to present oral communication, to convince people that this is the different approach that you can take, and also to share the information with the blue teams and with, more importantly, with stakeholders like CISO in the company that, doing this pen testing, you're able to find XYZ, and you have to present information that they can understand and support you. Because at the end of the day, the cost of doing something is not trivial, right? So there's a budgeting effort, tools, equipments that you have to buy, and of course, resource and effort put in place. Out of the box thinking. So again, this is not, you have to think like a person that wrote the code and try to be creative about it. There's no blueprint that you follow. So you have to try to guess and try to be just like Sherlock Holmes trying to find a needles in a haystack, right? Of course, from the technical side, this is a person that knows a lot in terms of software development, different way of doing attack and hackings, know how to review source code for security vulnerabilities. Like I mentioned earlier, input validation is a simple one that people talk about as an example. Different payload that might break your systems, and no different programming language, because again, application can be written in in many different commercial tools and languages, so you need to know them. And then when you use the tool, you need to know how to write programs and script. A lot of them are using Python, etc. So those are all the skills that you need to be a real hacker. Touch on the process. So we talk about the process from pen testing. There's planning, there's scoping, information gathering, the vulnerability scanning. So this we talk about phishing. To talk about looking at your source, not the source code, but the server. Try to find guess your password and try to get in. Looking at the different vulnerability that specific software has, and see if you can break them, and then you try to attack and exploit, and then finally write the reports. So with that said, can I quickly talk about RichBot a little bit? So this is a product that our company work on. So this is the first automated pen testing tool in the market that Risk Security developed. And of course, using RichBot, we will help doing the automation testing. And then of course, we also add additional test method like the adversary cyber emulation. This is what the industry referred to as. So what do I want to talk about the automated pen test? Because what I want to do next is kind of show you the comparisons. So on the left is the threat actor. So these are I kind of talked about the 4-step process earlier. So if you break down those processes, so this is what people do from a threat actors on a hacker perspective. This is for a pen testing, manual pen testing, which is the blue. And then finally, this is what RichBot will help in terms of accelerate some of the testing. So you can see some of the steps are similar, like the reconnaissance, the scanning, the gain access, the maintain system, the cover, the tracks. So hacker doesn't have to tell you what they do. Their goal is to break your systems and try to take data and try to extort you with ransomware or sell the information through dark webs, right? Personal identity, etc. So all they have to do is break the system. So that's their goal. And they don't follow any process. They will figure out whatever the cheapest way, the easiest way to gain access to the system. So either through phishing or through a USB stick or through a PCs that's sitting on the admin desk and people don't pay attention, then they'll use it as a jumping point to get into your network. From a pen test perspective, remember this is a compliance, a test report that used for to share information about state of your security posture of your network, to use it for compliance, etc. So there's a rigorous process people follow, because at the end of doing the pen test, you have to do the analysis, kind of say, how do I find this vulnerability? Is this real? How does it apply to the systems? And then you have to share that with the engineering team, the blue teams, so that they can do the fix. To the upper management, to the stakeholder like the CISO, so that you can get support from them and also budget, so that you can use the money to do whatever you need to do. Now, on the right-hand side, this is where RichBot comes in. So obviously, certain things the automated tool cannot do. So the users still have to do that. So this is the planning, the reconnaissance. So the users still have to work on that piece. Then when you talk about the actual pen testing, so RichBot actually automate the whole process for you. So you don't need to know about the different techniques. You don't need to know about the different language, how to run the tool, how to figure out what are the threat intelligence, the database, those threat knowledge, right? Those are all built into the tool, right? If you are manual, if you do it as a person, you need to know all the different technologies. If you're an expert in database, but then you also need to know Java, because people use Java for scripting language and for web developments. You need to know about C, because they might write other routines in C, right? And all those are a challenge for a person to know everything. Now, with RichBot, we put all that into a piece of software and to automate the whole process. So this is sort of a comparison with what pen test has evolved from manual testing to automated over time. So here are some of the success factors: know the scope, understand the target, the network. Most importantly, set the expectations. Then you pick the appropriate scenario to do test, check the result, and etc. So finally, talk about pen testing. So we kind of briefly mentions the skill set, the opportunities, right, in cybersecurity, specifically in pen testing. Just do a quick zip recruiter. I just kind of run zip recruiter this morning and do a keyword cybersecurity. It pops up in Silicon Valley. There's about 1,550 jobs right now related to cybersecurity. So this is range from account executive. This is the one that do what did it say? Remote, fully voice channels partners, right? This one is security analysts. A lot of security analysts, operations, threat intelligence, operations, etc. So there's a lot of jobs related to cybersecurity from the blue team, from the red team, from partnership, etc. And then on the right, kind of give you a little bit more in the. I think this is when I do a search on FBI cybersecurity. So even the government's looking for cybersecurity engineers, and this is the salary that they are kind of give you the range. The average is 100 all the way up to close to 175,000. So again, this is an area, a career that is very interesting. Is exploding in a sense of all this ransomware, all these things in the news, coupling with the company, the enterprise, the government agency, even countries, they cannot afford not to do anything in cybersecurity. So they are being forced to think about how do they address this issue, either by hiring people, by hiring security service companies, by looking at new tools, etc. All these cost money, all this require people, skills, different skill set to address this cyber security threat that is very real today. So with that said, I also want to impart you with some of the things that you can learn on your own. So there's continuous learning, professional certificate. So university learning, like the one you're in today, like Dr. Chin is very graceful to give me opportunity to share with you this topic. But you know, as he mentioned earlier in this workshop, you know, he's also intent to put something together for all of you as well. Some of the public university like UC Berkeley in the Bay Area, of course, Santa Clara, Stanford, they all have similar programs. There's also a trade association certificate. This actually certificate does cost money, but they are being recognized in the industry. If you want to certify hacker, ethical hacker, for example, people will hire you into a red team right away because they desperately need people with their skill set. And this program will basically walk you through the pen testing process, give you some of the basic trainings in terms of the different technologies, the different technique, the different way of doing hacking, right? And then give you hands-on exercise as well. Now, on the industry side, companies also focusing on providing certificate for its own product. For example, Cisco will give you security, CCIE in security. Microsoft will give you certificate in their Azure, in the Office 365, FireEye for their threat monitor system, CrowdStrike, of course, risk security. We also provide a professional certificate on how to use our tool as a pen testing tool as well. So there is no shortage of learning as long as you have the passions, you have the desire to get into this industry. There's many different avenues that you can find information. Google, if you do Google, there's a lot of YouTube's videos of how to do pen testing, what are the steps you need to do to learn. So with that said, I'm going to end this talk by give you some reference to some of the link, some of the information that I share available through the link as well. So I wish you guys a happy to consider this cybersecurity as your career and to look at it. I personally find this very exciting and very rewarding. The way I look at this is very similar to the networking world back 20 years ago when networking gets started, routers come into the pictures, etc. So this is the beginning. Well, not the beginning, but the whole industry is shifting toward security, and there's no shortage of opportunities in this field. So thank you. Let me just pause to see if you have any questions.
Yes, I have a first question. Essentially, you can hear me, isn't it?
Yes, I can.
Okay, so the first question essentially for a lot of this cybersecurity company or the cloud company, what's their cybersecurity strategy? And for example, the CrowdStrike, and you mentioned, and Zscaler, and also AWS or the Microsoft, what is their strategy, or what to say is what's the trend to handle this kind of cybersecurity?
Okay, so everybody have their own process and system in place. So when you talk about the company operations, right? So this is managing their own infrastructures. So let's take Microsoft, for example, the Azure, right? Or the AWS, Amazon from Amazon. So they are the one that provides service, right? The cloud service or infrastructure to end user. So they need to have certain way to provide protections for their customers. So if you subscribe to AWS for a cloud instance, for example, right, you will be able to get a server from them. You're able to do, if you click, you set up your servers. You don't have to worry about, do I need a firewall? Do I need a antivirus system or things like that? They basically provide that with you without specifics that tell you what it is. All they tell you is that you need to set up your policy. There's some security policy you need to follow, whether you need to open port, close port, etc. AWS will have all those put in place, right? They will have system monitoring the instance. So this is the cloud instance. They're looking at the VM that you're running. They're looking at the network coming in, and even Amazon also have a security rule of what you can do and cannot do. For example, they will not allow you to do pen testing on the AWS infrastructure. That's not allowed. You can do pen test on your own instance, but you're not allowed to do on AWS. You cannot send so much traffic that it looks like a DDoS or a DOS attack, because again, Amazon tried to protect its own cloud. So they do have governance regulations, and they also publish a set of rules that you cannot do when you use their service.
Okay, so I know that in AWS case, actually they have this kind of vulnerability, and if you click it, actually they will tell you you have this vulnerability. Do you want to update? Actually, if we do, you just link to the update automatically. So they do their work. But yes. Now my question essentially for the Zscaler CrowdStrike and CrowdStrike, what's the difference for their strategy in regarding the cybersecurity? I think they are doing different things. Isn't it? Slightly different.
No, they do different things. I think CrowdStrike is the one that provide, if I remember correctly, they provide security for your website. So they're protecting your website. So they saw like a WAFs sitting in front, and they also monitoring some of your traffic, etc. So they are different. So it's not apple to apple comparison. But in terms of their own infrastructure, they all do the same for their own infrastructure. But as a service to the end customers, of course, that's their value they provide to them is how they protect your systems, right?
Another thing, essentially, your system, Ridgebot, essentially is more focused on the application, or may not be focused on the like a VPC or some cloud service itself, but it's more for application inside the cloud, for example.
No, the product we provide is Ridgebot, which is automated pen testing tool. So one of the value that we provide, which is different than other vendors in the market, is that our tool can do multiple things. We can definitely test servers on-prem, like you said. We can also test cloud instance. So you have a VM or application running in the cloud, we can do pen tests on those products as well. We can also do pen tests on any public-facing website. So this is sort of like so that's step one. The first features is really automated pen testing. And of course, we also develop other capability like that can test your security device and your DLP, which is the data loss prevention device in your network.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question.
Sure.
How do you find the DDoS attack? I mean, just they put a lot of maybe the notes in different. Just wondering how do you prevent?
Well, so if you generate a lot of traffic on your PC or one PC against another device, if that device cannot handle your incoming requests, that is a definition of DDoS. So in the real world, there's not one PC attack. There's many PCs attack.
So there's a
specific website.
Something is hiding, right?
It's not hiding. It's just a request. Let's say I want to request a sessions, right? So let's say you have a web servers that can handle 100 requests, right? So if I send in one request, you respond, and nothing happened. If I send in 10, you're still within your operating parameter. If I send in 100, then you're hitting your limit, and then do 101, then you cannot respond anymore, right? So it's called denial service. So this is it's not it's just a regular request to the website, and people use that technique quite frequently because it's easy to do.
Thank you. About the security jobs required the mathematics background.
No, so I kind of put it if you can, okay. So yes and no, right? Depend what you want to do. So I thought about this a little bit, and instead of telling you exactly what it is, I kind of give you some of the function that you do. Kind of give you a clue. So if you do let me swap the screen. So if you do pen tester, right? So pen testing, you have to do planning, you have to do recons, hacking. This is actually a team, right? That's why I say red team. So one person may be really good at program management. One people is very good at trying to do phishing stuff. And this is definitely a technical person. This is a hardcore software developer that knows how to write code, right? Documentation, presentation. Now, you mentioned mathematics and stuff. A lot of them is algorithms that you have to figure out, right? Some of them require some of those background.
Thank you.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
So how these techniques grow in terms of science and the theoretical theories behind them? So are there like scientists looking for new ways of threats, and they publish papers or patents, and everybody can have access to it? It shouldn't be like that, but how does it work?
The answer is yes and no and all the above. I actually know a person He's a pretty young guy, recent grad as well, and I have a pleasure to get to know him because he's actually a real hacker, and his motivations is not money, is the ability, is pride, is the ability to find vulnerability in the systems or software that keep him up all night trying to find a way to break the systems. Right, so that's his motivations. Of course, there's other motivation, like people want to get financial gain, like all this APT or the government-sponsored group, and their goal is to extort money. Right, there's other people interested in doing hacking because of social justice. To your question about how did they figure all this out, a lot of them is passions. These people really like what they do and they enjoy what they do. They will spend up time trying to figure out what Microsoft is thinking or doing in the operating system, and they'll try different way to break it. There is threat intelligence database that's publicly available. I think I'll just mention one is our U.S. government, the NIST is publishing a whole bunch of vulnerability on their website that you can look. There is a website that will put out people's work because it's their pride and joy, and they want people to see what they do. So they will show their what they find in those areas. And then we do also have Black Hat conference. We have conference, like RSA conference, Black Hat conference, where people, like companies, will give a talk on certain vulnerabilities, certain techniques, certain way of doing things. And those information also available. Of course, there's certain information is not available because they don't publish it, right?
I have another question regarding the machine learning. So that means we need to have some data, some hack information, right? So how do you collect that?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, a lot of them, we do have a pretty comprehensive database of all the threats in the world today. There's a lot of public site that you can collect those information as well. Now, those are just historic data. And then your system need to be smart enough to figure out what's the real-time input data. And then you can use the input and historic and try to figure out what are the, basically this is how you sort improve the accuracy of your AI process or machine learning.